What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm super excited. I'm sitting here with my guy, Shawn Hicks. We've been trying to do this for a couple of weeks, but some life happens.
Definitely.
And but I knew he was somebody that I wanted to have on this episode of the podcast. Shawn and I, we're going to go ahead and get this out now. We are family. However, I respect so much about what he's doing, what he's done, his life as a father. He's the owner, operator, and he's a barber. He's not just a dude that pays the bills. A First and 10 Barbershop right here. We're in Clinton, right?
Yes, sir.
In Clinton, Maryland. So, man, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Good, man. You're welcome. I'm excited, man. We're going to get right into it. And I told you kind of before we started that this episode is going to be special because I want to release it on two different platforms because I know this conversation is going to it's going to be able to reach both of those audiences, and I know that they'll be able to get something from it. So I'm going to get right into the business side. This conversation, we're going to kind of talk about a little bit about business, and then we're going to transition into fatherhood. But I'm really interested in knowing, one, how long you've been a barber. I know you're going to say your whole life. And two, how did you get started?
Okay. Not my whole life. I've been cutting since I was 14.
Okay.
I fell in love with the lifestyle when I was a kid. Just being dropped off at the barbershop on Saturdays and spending my whole Saturday there.
Okay.
And yeah, that's how it started.
Okay.
And I just grew to love the whole barbershop lifestyle.
Okay.
You know, the respect that my barber had. You know, when most people say they looked up to a basketball player or an actor,
yeah.
I looked up to my barber.
Okay.
You know, and he didn't even know it. He didn't realize it until probably 15 years later.
Wow.
When I became a barber and I bumped into him, I was like, bro, you know how much you meant to me?
Right,
you know?
right.
But he never knew it.
So when you said you started at 14, I remember when I was in college, I cut a couple people's heads, you know, kind of like that. Was that kind of like your thing? You just kind of started cutting before you really...
Yeah. So anybody that knows me that grew up with me. So a lot of my core clients are the guys I started on.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow,
so I would say probably 30% of the guys that I cut to this day, I started with.
Okay.
My neighborhood guys. So I was the neighborhood barber.
Okay.
So it started with me cutting my close friends for free.
Okay.
You know, it started with me first. And I cut my own hair and was like, I didn't really mess up. You know, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. I was like, I think I could do this. So my mom so I'm a little older, so a lot of people might not have heard of Finger Hut.
Yeah.
It was an ordering magazine catalog. So
lines of credit.
Exactly. So I reached out to my mom, was like, look, they got this barber kit. And it wasn't even a kit. It was one pair of clippers with some guards.
Wow.
And I used to cut everybody in my neighborhood's hair with those one set of clippers.
Okay.
And so it started it. So it went from me didn't charge them nothing, to $3 to $5 and $7.
Okay.
And I thought I was making money. Right. I was really cutting pretty much everybody to the point where I didn't think people went to the barbershop. That's how busy I was.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when was the first time you like went inside of a brick and mortar? Like when you...
All right, so
were you in somebody else's shop, or did you just start off doing your own thing?
I definitely started in someone else's shop. It's crazy because I was in barber school. I went through a rough period. I lost my mom and just lost my way, and I reached out to my dad and was like, look, I messed up. I left home, but I had no direction. And he was like, look, you need to find a trade. And he was like, whatever you decide, I'll go ahead and pay for it. But you need to find something.
Right.
And I was like, well, okay, let's go to barber school. Went to barber school. But being that I had been cutting for years before then, when I got to barber school, what I tell a lot of people, you learn how to cut hair in a barber shop. A barber school teaches you the fundamentals and the book work. But you won't be a barber until you get into a shop.
Okay.
So what happened was I went to Bladensburg Barber School under Mike Harrison.
Is that on Rhode Island Avenue?
What is that? It's in Bladensburg. That might be Rhode Island.
It was okay.
I know that. I'm not familiar with the area, but it's still there. It's still open to this day. So what happened was I was that guy at the barber school that I really didn't have to do what everybody else did. I was the one that walked around and helped fix haircuts.
Oh, okay.
So
From
one
your
day,
real world experience from.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, just because I was already doing it, and it was no need for me to go through what everybody else was doing through because I was already doing it.
Right.
So one day, the lady came in. Her name was June. I can't think of June's last name, but she had a shop. She was from Barbados.
Okay.
She opened up a shop in Spring Hill Lake in the Greenbelt.
Okay.
So if anyone is familiar with the area, it's Spring Hill Lake, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the biggest apartment complexes in the United States.
Wow.
Behind Queensbridge, I think, in New York. But yeah, I didn't know that until I started working it. But it had its own shopping center.
Okay.
Inside the community center. Inside the community. And she was opening up a barbershop. So she was looking for barbers. So when she came in, Mike was like, yeah, you can take Shawn. And that's how I started. Yep.
So it's funny because I know some of the history, and I mean a small part.
Right.
But where did you first open First and 10?
Okay, so let me kind of bridge that together.
Okay.
So when I got there, she basically opened up a shop on a block in I stayed probably in Spring Hill Lake probably about a year to the point where then she wanted to move into another location. Mm-hmm. So we went to, she moved the shop to Georgia Avenue on a corner, on a block where it was 4 barbershops that have been there for years.
Okay.
So I remember being there in the first month, and I just moved out on my own, got my first apartment, and I remember getting there and I was spending more money to get to work than I was making a week.
Right.
And I remember going back to the barber school like, Mike, I'm going broke. I said, I'm losing money. I just got an apartment, this and that and the third. And he was like, well, look, you can go to my shop in Clinton.
Hey everyone, listen, I hope you all are enjoying this episode of the podcast, but I just wanted to stop for a moment to tell you about my favorite camera bags in the whole world by Think Tank Photo. And you guys, I think they're my favorite because the build quality is absolutely phenomenal. Listen, right here, I have my Production Manager 50 and I also have my Airport International Series roller bags. These camera bags go with me everywhere. Now in this particular bag, maybe I have a couple of camera bodies and some lenses and speed lights, or maybe I'll have all of that as well as my strobes, my light stands to include my C-stands, light modifiers, you name it. Everything that goes in here, I always know that my gear is going to be protected, whether I'm traveling through the city or whether I'm on and off airplanes. I promise you, these bags, this equipment will protect your gear. Now, maybe you're not in the market for a roller bag. Maybe you're looking for something in the backpack style. Maybe you're looking for something for cable management or your memory cards. Think Tank Photo is going to have everything that you need. So I want you to go to thinktankbags.com. That's thinktankbags.com. Go through the inventory. See if there's something that you like, and I promise you, if you invest in one of these bags, you will not be disappointed. Now let's get back to the episode.
Which at that time was Harrison's Barbershop. Okay. That he owned. He had 3 shops at the time, but this was one of the ones that was his baby, which was on at 9014 Old Branch Avenue, Clinton.
Okay.
All right. So I went there. Long story short, I stayed there probably about... That was probably 98. Mm-hmm. And eventually I talked them into selling me the location in 05.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was Clinton. Like, where exactly is that in Clinton?
That's it's right beside, most people probably know BK Miller. It's at the intersection. Literally is across the street from my present location.
Oh, okay. So okay.
It's like literally I can look at it right now.
It's right there. So this is your second. So this has been your second location.
Yes. Same name, second location. So I spent 11 years there, and I've been here 16. Well, I'm sorry, 11 years there and 6 years here.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So man, if you go on Instagram, you go on YouTube,
right?
Like everybody got tutorials up. Everybody talking about like barbering, but I want to know like what has being a shop owner, operator, and a barber who's had high profile clients yourself.
Right.
What has that been like as far as focusing on still your craft, your particular set of clients, and running a shop where you have other barbers? Like, what has that experience been like?
It's hard. It's hard because you expect everyone to have the same drive and focus that you do.
Right.
And what I've learned over the 17 years of business, they don't. And early in my career, like I said, there was no blueprint. I jumped out there. I didn't have, Mike was he was loosely a mentor, and I don't even think he understands how much I used his blueprint in a lot of things that he did when I worked for him and under Harrison's. And I tried to apply it when I got the opportunity to run a shop. I'm not going to lie. I made a lot of mistakes early because I don't mince my words. I'm very blunt. And so a lot of people can take that as being rude. So I look at it like, if I'm doing something, I expect you to do it. I'm not a vocal kind of guy. I try to lead by example, by my work ethic when I come in and how I leave and how I work when I'm in the shop. Early in my career, I was totally different to where I am now. In
what way though? Like, what would be like something that jumps out to you that will say, you know what, I'm not like that anymore? If you could name one thing.
Communication.
Okay.
At that time, I would just say it. I didn't nurture you. No filter. Like, you messing up. You know what I mean? Instead of like, okay, this is what you should do.
Okay.
Back then, I probably rubbed the people the wrong way. Like, look, I'm just very blunt. And like I said, that could be taken wrong. Instead of nurturing people and teaching them, I expected them to already know.
Right.
But a lot of times, like, I didn't know how to be a shop owner. They didn't know how to be a professional barber.
Okay.
But I didn't take that into account early. I learned that over years.
Okay.
And my first group and crew of guys that I had, I'm not going to say guys because I had young ladies as well. The first group of people that I had, they probably tell you that I was brash. They probably tell a lot of things that I did wrong. But I can tell you that my second group probably would have a different opinion of me now than I did then.
So what would you say, like, if for up and coming barbers that are just getting into it, or barbers that have kind of been into it for a minute, everybody want the high end clientele, right? And you and I have kind of talked offline a little bit about kind of what that entails, what that looks like. Right. Because people they go for the bag. They just want, like, I know I'm gonna get paid if I can get these types of clients. But explain to folks what it actually means to have that level of clientele, and what does it demand? What does it ask for?
I'm gonna tell you now, it demands to be on call at any time, because you have to understand, when you start dealing with ball players, entertainers, and stuff like that, they don't work the regular 9-to-5 schedule. So it's a sacrifice when it comes to time. I'm a dad, I have a family, so I'll get a call. Like, for instance, I cut several wizards over the years, and you got to realize a lot of times their game isn't over, let's say, 10:30, 11 o'clock. They go out to eat, then my phone rings. So we're talking 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. You got a wife, that phone rings, and she's like, why are you leaving this time of night? Right. She understood, but she was just more about my safety. Me moving around them times of night. But it's a sacrifice because you have to be at their call,
right?
When they need you. So that's one of them things where a lot of people might not understand. They might look at the glory, I'm doing this, that, and the third, but it was more of a headache than anything, because a lot of times, those guys that live that type of life, they're used to people being at their beck and call,
right?
And they're not used to people saying no. I don't want to put one of the ball players' name out there, but it was his rookie year. He just got with the Wizards, and I've been dealing with him for a couple months at the time, and I seen how he treated a lot of people that that he dealt with. Right. So I'm sitting there cutting, and I can see him, the phone ring, and he'll be like, just brush it off. So one night he calls me and asks, hey, can you come out? No problem. I jump in the car. It's probably 11, 12. I sit out in front of his apartment. I see him pull up. I sat there. He didn't call. I sat there 45 minutes, 50 minutes. I'm texting him. Then it got to a point where I left. And he was like, why did you leave? I said, candidly, I was like, bro, man, you had me waiting almost an hour, and I saw you pull up. Right. And he was like, why didn't you wait? I said, I'm old enough to be your dad, first of all. So respect my time, because you know my situation. Right. So, we had a little back and forth. I left. He was like, you're not coming back? I said, no, I'm not coming back. He didn't call me for 2 weeks. He called me back and apologized. I was like, look, I'm sorry. I'm just getting to the league. I'm just trying to find my way. But, long story short is you have to set your boundaries. You have to let them know you are a man. I'm not a fan.
Right.
And I think that's why
that's good.
My growth through that world went pretty quickly because I showed them I'm not a fan. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't, how was the game? This, that, and the third. Nah, this is business. And once they understood that, it just took off.
So speaking, that's a good transition. So speaking of the business side, right? Like people that know me, they see me like they know. Okay, he probably cutting his own stuff, right? And I ain't gonna lie, too. Like I'm not like,
right.
But I remember when haircuts was $10, right?
Right.
What do you like? I believe one of the hardest things in business, especially when you already have clientele at established prices.
Right.
One of the toughest things is to scale your pricing model, right?
Right.
So for folks that are apprehensive about doing that, like what are your thoughts towards like scaling business, right? Because I think as a creative, which is definitely what you are, people sometimes take for granted, especially when you're dealing with people that own businesses, people that are public figures.
Right.
Because I tell my wife this all the time as a makeup artist, people don't understand that the service that you provide is a big part of controlling the look of their brand.
Exactly.
So with that, there's value in that. So how would you, if someone was saying they were interested, like, I need to grow, I need to charge more, I need to do whatever, like what's the mindset that goes into positioning your business to do that?
So you can demand that price point.
Yes.
Okay. So, all right, I can do that twofold.
Okay.
In the shop and when it comes to dealing with, high-end clientele.
Okay.
All right. So I always felt that I felt wrong for charging a certain price point.
Okay.
To regular people, just because I thought old school, but you have to learn the times change. So I'm going to use one of my old barbers, for example. So he was a guy that wanted to charge a certain price point, but he didn't give that price point service. He was a talented barber, but it's more to charging $60, $70 for a haircut than the haircut. What I tried to preach to him was you're selling an experience when you start charging a certain price point.
Okay.
And his problem was he didn't greet his clients. His body language was bad. He didn't ask them about their day. He didn't correspond with them. He didn't have dialogue with them whatsoever. I'm like, it's a lot of talented barbers out here. You have to separate yourself. You have to offer what comes with that price point, and that's one thing that to this day with my regular clients in every year, I'm not gonna say every year, every other year I've probably gone up on my price on my clientele. But most people, I'm always worried like, man, how many people I'm going to lose when I do this,
right.
Because everybody, because I know most of my clients, because I'm intimate with my clients, I talk to them, I know them, I know their family, I know their kids, I know their situations. And I know a lot of times that price point doesn't fit into their budget, but you have to charge what you feel that you're worth. If you feel that you're selling a service or you're giving a service that's deserving of a certain price point, you have to charge it. And surprisingly, I don't lose clientele, because one thing I always tell my guys, I treat my clients like family. They take care of my family. So I work for them.
That's a good point.
That's one thing I always have done. When I come in, I know everything about my clients. Even the ones I don't sit there and talk to on a daily basis and get deep into it, I know them, and I make it my business to. And it's a reason why when holidays, birthdays, and things like that come up, my kids get gifts. I get gifts. I get bonuses. Even though I'm charging a certain price point, I still get those things because I give that back in the service that I give, and that's just my day-to-day clients. Then when it comes to dealing with the celebrity clientele and the higher end clientele, that was by happenstance. So I went the first time I cut one of the guys from the Wizards. I was like, he was like, so how much I owe you? I was like, $50. He was like, what? He literally was like, bro, don't you ever charge anybody $50. He was like, look, here's $175, because you got to realize you're charging. you're first of all, you're packing all your equipment.
Yeah.
You're bringing your service to them. You're selling a convenience,
Right.
so they don't have to come in.
Right.
And if any barber, you talk to any barber, anybody, yourself and your wife, because you in the same field, it's tough to give you that look that you want out of your workplace.
Yeah.
So it's tough. So it's double that. So you're selling convenience, and the product has to match it. But, I was told, like, look, bro, don't you ever sell yourself short. You're
Right.
doing a lot, and these guys make good money. So, and it's funny you brought that up because I watched a video of Patrick Beverly. It was like, these barbers are getting out of hand.
I saw that.
You saw that? He's like, they're charging $300, this, that, and the third.
Yeah.
But, when I was dealing with John Wall and these guys, I hate to drop names, but they pay me for your time.
Right.
It's more the time and the convenience.
Yes.
They understand what you're sacrificing. The ones that care.
Yeah.
Lucky I can say that the people that I've dealt with, I've never had a difficult client when it comes to that high end. They understood who I was and what I had, and they paid for that.
Okay.
They understand I'm walking away from my family 12 at night, coming back 2, 3 in the morning.
Right.
So they paid for that time.
Okay. So look, that's a good transition because let's talk about the family aspect, right? Having 3 kids, being away, because I know you're a caring dad.
Yeah, I do.
And so any time, I don't know if people really understand that, any time that you have to spend away from your family, that's premium time for me.
Yeah.
Like especially if you call on like a holiday, if you call in and I gotta, you gotta pay for that, right? But I want to know, how has fatherhood changed you?
And I'm just be candid and be honest with you. In the beginning, I didn't handle it the best. But I tell people all the time, to be successful, it's going to take some sacrifice. And a lot of times when you're a family person, the sacrifice is time. But it was to a point where I was missing out on a lot of experiences with my children that I can't get back. Just because I was so hell-bent on developing and building something. One thing I will say, and I always try to stress now that I know, I should have made my family more a part of what I was doing. It was one of them things where this is me, this is my thing, this is my brand. But in that same sentence, I was saying this is a family business.
Right.
But I didn't make my family a part of it. So in the beginning, I dropped the ball. So now that I know this, I try to make, and I want to make them more a part of what I do. So I talk more about what I do. So they understand. My kids always understood I'm working. And I would always let them know that, look, for us to live a certain lifestyle, I have to be away. So they understood, but at the same time, I did miss out on a lot of quality time, especially with my wife.
Right.
With my kids were understanding, but I didn't have that same dialogue with her. And I'm not going to lie, it made a lot of friction just because of the hours. You got to realize, I leave, it's 12, 14-hour days. So when I leave, they either are going to school or sleep, and I'm gone, or they're, but by the time I get home, they're asleep. And she's then put them to bed, and she's getting ready for bed. And I've missed out on a full day, And at that time, I wasn't an iPhone user, so it wasn't like I could FaceTime and have that communication with him.
He was green bubble. He
I
was
was
green
that guy,
bubble dude. Yeah.
Still green bubble. But no, I do. But at the same, if I could go back, I definitely would do it differently.
Okay.
But you live and learn.
What are, I know we mentioned the time aspect of it. Were there any other mistakes that you feel outside of time, or was time your biggest adversary when it comes to fatherhood specifically?
I use, and I think like you said, off camera, we talked about being present but not present. I was, my dad was when people ask me how my dad's been in my life my whole life and still is. Love to death. My dad was my best man at my wedding. He's my best friend.
Y'all just was looking like too.
I look just like him. They call me Little Him when I go to my hometown or whatever.
Right.
But my dad was always in my life. But when I describe him, is he was a provider. You know, he wasn't a dad. He didn't teach me a lot of things.
Okay.
My dad he came from a military background.
Okay.
His dad was military. He was military.
I get it. Yeah.
So it was one of those things where it's old school. I make the money. You take care of the family.
Okay.
As much as I always told my wife and myself I didn't want to be that type of dad, I ended up being that dad because I was so hell-bent on giving my family a certain lifestyle that I was present but not present. You can be there and not be there.
So knowing what you know now,
right,
like and cleaning up some of those things,
right.
Like, have you been able to start making the adjustments now?
Yes. Like I just told you, this last 2 years has been a complete 360 for me when it comes to myself and how I deal with my family. It probably started a little before then, but I'm starting to see the fruits of my labor in these last 2 years.
Okay.
It's like I made a conscious decision to be a better dad, be present in the moment, and put my family first, not my business. It's hard to do, but you can do both. It's about finding that median and making them, a part of it.
That was actually one of the questions I had for you was about family and business and the balance, right? Because a lot of people will say there's no balance, and what they, from where I have understood it, it doesn't mean that things are just always off. It's just whenever you're doing whatever you're doing, you got to be 100% in it, whether that's business or that's family.
Facts.
So
Facts.
Is that where you have made the adjustment, understanding being present?
Yes, because we were speaking earlier. When I give advice to the young guys that reach out to me, I've gotten to a point where now I use my platform to help others that are coming up. Learn from my mistakes, learn from the things that I've learned. With anything that you do, you need to put 100% in it. And that's what I always tell them. You're not going to get 100% results until you give it 100% effort. And a lot of times, like I said, once again, and to be successful, you have to sacrifice. And a lot of times it's time. But once you get to a certain point, you have to find how to balance it with, your family life. And I hate to say it, it took me a while. And
but that's real though.
And it's been honest. And then it took me a while, and there's a lot of bumps in the road. I almost lost my family. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm being honest. And like I said, this last 2 years it taught me that I had to almost lose my family to understand that I had to be better. Not just for me, but for them.
And that's part of these conversations that we had. Because the one thing about us as guys, we don't talk, and part of this platform is to at least get the conversation started, or to let other dads know, hey, look, you're not in this by yourself.
Right.
Because you see so many, especially the situation that's happened with Twitch and all this other stuff. Like so many people that are, especially creatives, like every time you operate, and I was saying this, I told my wife this actually after he passed. I said, every time a creative operates in their gift, they give a piece of themselves away. And a lot of times,
that's big.
They don't replenish it.
Right.
So for us as creatives to do what we do, we're giving something of us to that person. And if you want to grind, a lot of times you don't stop. Like for me, my family replenishes a lot. Right. You know what I mean? But if you don't stop, you'll wake up and you empty, and you like, I got all this stuff, and it's like, I don't know what to do with it. Yeah,
you're 100% correct, because a lot of times, like I said, I went through a period where a lot of people that I started to, I'm an introvert, first of all. But since I've gotten into therapy and so forth, I've learned to express myself. I've learned to be vulnerable, let people know what I was going through. And when I started doing that, I seen how many people needed it, and like you said, you give out so much, but you didn't get it back. You're giving out a piece of you. And what I found in this time was once I started showing my vulnerability, because everyone was like, what, you go through this, you this, and, then people put me on a pedestal where I felt like I was perfect, and you carry that, and you don't realize, when your loved one's telling you like, bro, you got problems, you know.
That's difficult. And I want everybody to kind of hear that, like, as creatives, no matter what your field is, if you're decent, don't mention if you're good or great.
Right.
You're always hearing how great what you do is.
Exactly.
And you run with that and forget about
your faults.
You suck at finances.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
You
or
suck at being a dad. You suck at being a husband.
Yeah, it's like
you don't see it. You
it's
don't
the
hear
accolades
it. Right.
that kind of and that's a lot of times I feel like that's where we missed the mark at. But real quick,
Definitely.
So you mentioned therapy.
Yes.
How has that been for you?
Great. I've been waving my therapy flag for the last probably solid year and a half.
How long you been in? Not in. Don't they?
How
How long you been in, man? Like how long have you been in therapy?
2 years, like I told you, man. I literally was on the brink of losing my family.
Okay.
And the first thing I wanted to do was find out the chinks in my armor that I didn't think I had. And therapy was great. I'm on my second therapist, but I would love to say her name, but she is the best person. I've been dealing with her probably about 3-4 months now.
Okay.
And I swear I can't. Anybody want to listen, I was like, look, bro, you got a problem? I got some help for you.
That's good.
Just talk. You have to talk. I think as black men, we're brought up to be, we can't show softness. We can't show weakness.
For sure.
What do you mean you got a problem? No,
Yeah.
you deal with it. You make it right.
Right.
And that's how I lived, because like I told you, I came to a structured background when it came to how the men reacted. And I told myself that I want to break that chain with me. I want to break that quote unquote generational curse.
Right.
When it comes to not showing vulnerability and not being happy with your faults. Most people are like, I have a thing where I used to say, I know my faults, but that's not enough. You can know them, but you're still just walking with them, and I never did anything to make them better, so it's just like, you got to deal with the asshole that I am,
right?
Instead of trying not to be that asshole,
right?
Once I got in the therapy,
right, I see what
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
My dad was like, he gave me, when I was in a dark time in my life, I asked him, I was like, Pops, man, this, that, and the third going on. And he was like, hey, look, they just got to deal with it. This is who we are.
Wow.
And then it literally was a light switch. It was like, nah, man, I don't want to be that way.
Right.
Why does they have to adjust to me instead of me wanting to be better?
Right.
And that's when I got into diving into myself and finding the faults.
Okay.
Yeah, knowing is half the battle, but now let's just try to fix it.
Right.
I remember having that conversation with my dad and pulling up in my garage and calling my wife and was like, I became who I said I didn't want to become. And she was like, look, now you know. Now you can fix it. And that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
What advice for new fathers? What advice would you give to them? It could be in any particular area. If there was a person that came to you and said, look, man, I'm about to be a dad, or it might be one of them situations, you cutting, man, my girl pregnant. I don't know what to do.
It's simple.
What would you tell them?
They come first. Regardless of whatever you got going on, your family comes first. And I always thought that's what I was doing, because I felt that what I was doing was for them. But just being honest, I was being selfish. I was doing it because of the accolades. I liked how I felt. I liked how people put me on this pedestal. I said I was doing it for my family, which I was financially, but emotionally and being there, I wasn't there. You have to be there for your family. Your family comes first over anything. It's hard. It's easier said than done, because like I also said, for you to be who you want to be business-wise, it takes sacrifice. Right. It's finding that median. It's tough.
Man, listen, I feel like we could sit down and just talk for a long time, and
Definitely.
we gonna have to figure out a way to do a part 2. I'm gonna figure out something creative to do. Maybe even talking about fatherhood, maybe with some other barbers, or what, maybe have a little round table.
Love to.
I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, this is good. And the biggest thing is, I think a lot of people will be able to get some nuggets from this.
Yeah.
Because it's all about becoming a high performance father.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of us are good at what we do, but we neglecting our health. We're neglecting so many different other things. But I'm just hoping that we can all come together, man, and then figure this thing out. Like I told, it's no blueprint to fatherhood.
It's none.
It's
not.
You can give some strategies.
Right.
Every kid is different.
Right.
Every mom is different. Every dad is different, man. And I think, if we can kind of build a community, we can bounce some stuff around, man. Definitely. Just make it a little bit better for the next one. So
that's what we're here for.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you coming on the show,
Thank
man.
you.
All right, y'all. We're going to end it with that one.
Appreciate it.